Welcome everybody to the SNN Network Australia virtual event. I'd like to introduce our next presenter for the event. I'd like to introduce Brad O'Connor, the CEO of Cogstate. It's a publicly traded company. I got two symbols for you, CGS on the ASX and COGZF on the OTCQX. Brad, take it away.
Thanks, Robert. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody. I want to start today by outlining the themes of my presentation. The first theme is that our established clinical trials business is growing substantially. In our clinical trials segment, Cogstate offers technology and associated services to pharmaceutical companies for use in their clinical drug trials. For the year to 30 June 2020, the clinical trials segment delivered our best annual sales result that we've ever recorded. That was $46 million US of new sales contracts in that 12-month period. At September 2020, the most recent quarter end, Cogstate has contracted revenue in excess of $42 million US that will be recognised over coming periods. So that segment is in really good shape. The second theme, and perhaps the most exciting aspect that we'll discuss today, is our emerging healthcare business. Just over 2 weeks ago, we were very pleased to be able to announce that we'd executed a global license agreement with pharmaceutical company ASI that will forever change the commercial opportunity for Cogstate and positions us to launch the first ever widely adopted digital assessment of cognition. The final theme that we'll discuss is the financial impact of the operating business and the increase in shareholder value that we expect to be able to deliver in the coming years. The combination of the upfront royalty related to the global license that we've signed with ASI, along with the growing revenue from our established clinical trials business, positions us really well to be able to create substantial shareholder value in the coming years. Cogstate was founded 20 years ago against a backdrop of an ageing population and the increasing incidence of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Our vision was to develop technology that would allow us to take cognitive assessment beyond specialty centres and into the community where it could help meet the need for early detection of memory impairment. Our ambition was to make regular cognitive assessment as simple and as commonplace as measuring blood pressure, something that everyone should do periodically as part of good healthcare. We wanted to avoid the problems that plague traditional cognitive assessments and ensure that our tests were repeatable and they didn't discriminate based on language or culture of the individual being tested. In other words, we wanted to be able to test anyone, anywhere, at any time. Today, Cogstate is perfectly positioned to play a significant role in helping to reimagine and shape evolving healthcare ecosystems. While we provide just one component of a much larger jigsaw puzzle, we're helping our partners to reimagine what that puzzle could look like. Since first launching our technology in the clinical trials market in 2004, the majority of Cogstate's revenue has come from this business segment, where our customers are pharmaceutical companies seeking to determine the impact that their investigational compounds might have on cognition. Clinical trials is our established business, and that generated $21 million US of revenue in financial year 20. This is a project revenue model that provides us with great forward visibility and predictability of our revenue, and the length of clinical trials provides that a revenue tail for us to build on from year to year. Healthcare, which is the use of our technology to measure brain health in the community, is really our next horizon. It was the basis of our original investment proposition, and it's starting to become a reality as we get closer to the release of a disease-modifying therapy for Alzheimer's disease. This is a subscription-based software revenue model sold through strategic partners, in this case such as ASI, who have other revenue, and in the case of ASI, that means revenue from therapeutics tied to the adoption of the Cogstate software. In both of these segments, Cogstate relies on more than 600 peer-reviewed publications that come from decades of collaboration between academic researchers and Cogstate science team. Partnering with great brands in both the clinical trials and the healthcare segments enables Cogstate to ride waves through disruption, generate greater opportunities and to ensure that we're at the front end of the food chain rather than at the commodity end. Over the last year, we've demonstrated the ability and the intent to partner in ways that enhance our strategic options. ASI have provided us the ability to launch our healthcare offering in Japan initially, and they're a partner that's perfectly aligned to build an awareness of brain health in an aging society. Later on in this presentation, we'll discuss how we've extended that partnership globally in the last couple of weeks. The Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation, along with their collaboration with the Gates Foundation, to establish a diagnostic accelerator program focused on Alzheimer's disease, has enabled us to build out cutting-edge technology solution with non-dilutive funding for technology that will have application across both our clinical trials and the healthcare segments, and that's really exciting. And then finally, in the clinical trials segment, a recently announced partnership with the large technology provider ERT provides Cogstate with a sales distribution channel into a significant portion of the global clinical trials market. And we're really hopeful that this partnership will provide tremendous upside for Cogstate in 2021 and beyond. So to dig into the detail a little bit, I want to first look at the clinical trials segment. Get these slides working. In the clinical trials division, Cogstate enters into sales contracts with both pharmaceutical and biotech companies for the provision of Cogstate technology and services for use in their clinical trials to determine the extent to which their investigational compound is impacting on the cognition of the patient population. Cogstate works across a whole range of indications, as is depicted on this slide. In this market, Cogstate technology can be used as both an efficacy endpoint, and in that context, we're attempting to determine if the potential therapy improves the cognition in the patient population, and we do that in indications such as Alzheimer's disease. However, our technology can also be used as a safety endpoint, and in that context, we're attempting to determine if the potential therapy has a side effect which may make cognition deteriorate. And we see that in studies such as oncology, where certain chemotherapies can impact cognitive function. The sales contract that we execute in the clinical trial segment will differ in value for each clinical trial, depending on the scope of the technology and services that Cogstate is providing, as well as the complexity and length of that study. An increase in the total value of sales contract executed will increase our revenue backlog, and over time that will result in an increase in revenue recognised by Cogstate. Revenue from sales contracts is recognised over the life of the contract, and the length of the clinical trial can vary from several months for a phase 1 study to 4 to 5 years for a phase 3 study. And revenue is recognised based on the achievement of predetermined milestones. And so during each period, our revenue could be recognised either from contracts that were in backlog at the beginning of the period, as well as sales contracts that are executed during the period. And usually we see a time lag between an increase or a decrease in the level of sales contracts and the recognition of revenue under that contract. The value associated with executed sales contracts that has not yet been recognised as revenue at any point in time we refer to as contracted future revenue. And the revenue from those contracts will be recognised upon the achievement of those milestones. For the year to 30 June 2020, as shown in this slide here, Cogstate has executed $46 million US of clinical trial sales contracts. That result was an improvement of over 150% on the prior year, and a 28% improvement on the previous record, which was set in financial year 2018. That level of sales contract executed in 2020 is a reflection of the accelerating demand for our scientific solutions and our technologies. We've seen continued growth in areas such as rare disease indications, as well as a rebound in investment by our customers in Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease was an area that was negatively impacted through the 2019 financial years by a series of clinical trial failures, and you can see that impact shown in the slide there in terms of net bookings for the 2019 financial year. So after that very disappointing 2019 year, we feel that we're picking up where we left off at the end of the 2018 financial year. I want to turn now to talk about the healthcare segment of our business. Whilst as I talked about previously, Cogstate works across a range of indications, there's no doubt that the application of our technology as a screening tool for memory loss that may be associated with Alzheimer's disease represents an enormous opportunity for us. Globally, Alzheimer's disease is a huge societal problem that strains healthcare budgets, reduces quality of life for an increasing number of older people, and places an enormous burden on loved ones who must become caregivers. Alzheimer's disease is the most significant and untreated chronic disease in the world today. The number of people living with Alzheimer's disease increases every year, and to date, there's been no therapeutic treatment that could alter the course of the disease. As the world's population rapidly ages, the societal impact of Alzheimer's disease and the related dementias is staggering. Early detection of cognitive impairment is critical for meaningful intervention around care planning, lifestyle modifications, and symptomatic treatments, and will be especially critical with the advent of an approved therapy that could change the course of this devastating disease. As an industry, we've never been closer to disease-modifying therapy than we are now, with multiple promising monoclonal antibodies in late-stage development, and one currently under priority review with the FDA. The potential for disease-modifying therapy for Alzheimer's disease has meant an increased interest from pharmaceutical companies to identify those in the community who are suffering from memory loss. And it's against that backdrop that we're really pleased to announce last month a global license agreement with Japanese pharmaceutical company Eisai. The global license expands upon an agreement that the two companies entered into last year. Over the last year, Eisai proven to be a really supportive partner that is committed to building an entire ecosystem for dementia patients and their families, with solutions targeting everything from identification of the first signs of memory loss to the development of therapeutic treatments, as well as a range of lifestyle factors in between. Under the terms of the license, Eisai will be responsible for marketing Cogstate technology in all countries, including all existing technology and future improvements to the Cogstate technologies. The agreement will exclude our clinical trials business, where Cogstate will continue to offer our technology and services independently. The license has a term of 10 years on a country-by-country basis from the date of commercial launch in each country. Eisai have committed to launch inside the United States within the next year, within the EU within 3 years, and China within 4 years. We actually expect them to exceed those targets, so that we have to. That's the latest date by which they have to launch under this contract. That Eisai will have the option to terminate the agreement after 5 years under certain specific conditions, and we don't expect those conditions to come into play. Under the license, Eisai will pay Cogstate minimum payments totaling $45 million US across the 10 years, which includes a $15 million upfront license fee and $30 million of minimum royalties. The minimum royalties, which increase from year to year, will total at least $10 million for the period of years 1 to 5, and then another $20 million for the period of years 6 to 10. Now, those minimum royalties are just that, they're the minimum. The actual royalty that will be paid to Cogstate will be the higher of the amount calculated as a royalty on gross sales, or that minimum. Similar to the agreement in respect of Japan that we put in place over a year ago, Eisai will fund any software development work required to further develop, improve, or alter our product for use within each country, and we do expect modifications on a country-by-country basis. And then Eisai will also manage all regulatory issues and be responsible for all sales and marketing activities. Probably most importantly, the resulting data from the use of the technology will be jointly owned by Eisai and Cogstate. With the potential imminent launch of disease-modifying treatments for Alzheimer's disease, the need for sensitive and scientifically validated, but really easy to use tests of memory has never been greater. When therapies are approved by regulators, it is expected to stimulate demand for tests that have been shown to be sensitive to the earlier signs of memory impairment, consistent with the level of impairment found in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. However, even without a pharmaceutical treatment, there's growing evidence of the benefits of early diagnostic, including changes that can be made to lifestyle, such as diet and exercise, and they can have a meaningful impact on brain health. In collaboration with ASI, we expect that Cogstate solutions will be marketed in a range of situations as it is related to early detection of cognitive impairment. For example, individuals seeking a brief snapshot of their cognitive health. We expect to be able to deliver home-based assessments that can be done on a phone, a tablet computer, or a personal laptop computer, essentially anything that has a browser. In that context, we'll be asking the question, do I need to talk to my doctor about my memory? For in-clinic assessments, with a full report for a treating physician, this will be supportive of annual health checkups, such as the annual wellness visit that's available to all Medicare recipients in the USA, or an annual physical that could be arranged by an employer, as is the case for many employers in Japan. In this context, we'll be answering the question, is my cognitive health the same as it was last year? Upon release of the therapy for Alzheimer's disease, we expect to see a large increase in patients presented with memory impairment because of the potential access to that treatment. Such a rush of patients has the potential to place strain on the overall health system unless we see widespread use of much better tools. If a potential therapy is approved, the availability of cognitive assessment will need to be able to scale quickly from what it is today in order to identify patients most suitable for that treatment. Healthcare professionals at all levels of care will need to be able to access scientifically proven, sensitive, reliable, and rapid technology. The Cogstate technology, with its capability for at-home assessment, can be incredibly valuable, especially in the current COVID environment, where we are conducting more and more telemedicine appointments. In this context, we'll be answering the question, is the patient likely candidate for the new treatment? Important to keep in mind here that no cognitive test, nor any biomarker, can be used in isolation to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. Rather than making a diagnosis, the physician must take into account a number of different factors, one of which is cognition. After release of a therapy, it's important to continually monitor the cognition of the patient. In this context, we'll be answering the question, should this patient continue with therapy? This question may in fact be asked by medical insurers or payers, as well as the prescribing physician. Okay. Of course, at the end of the day, it's our job, and especially my job, to create value for our shareholders. Over the last 12 to 18 months, the commercial opportunities that exist for Cogstate have completely changed. We now have the opportunity to close the loop between clinical trials, screening for memory impairment, and treatment options available for patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. This is a really critical element and growth factor in respect of Cogstate and our business opportunities. The use of our technology in clinical trials provides scientific evidence of the validity and utility of our technology. That validation, combined with our ability to offer online self-assessment of cognition and memory impairment, position Cogstate tests as the perfect screening tool. With the support of our commercialization partner, ASI, Cogstate tests will be used in physicians' offices as part of the diagnostic assessment protocol. And finally, the expanded use of Cogstate technology for the early detection of cognitive decline amongst individuals in the community, we believe will result in increased demand for our technology and endpoint in clinical trials, really closing that loop. So now begins a new era for Cogstate. In collaboration with an incredibly dedicated and focused commercial partner like ASI, we now have the opportunity to become a leading measure of cognitive health for individuals around the world. So to summarise, as I stated earlier, Cogstate's now beginning a new era. The global license of our technology at ASI in the healthcare segment will allow a global launch of our technology to individuals and physicians. ASI have proven to be a good partner, and we're really excited about the coming months and years in terms of what we'll see from that partnership. Our clinical trials business has grown significantly over the last 18 months, and subject to some uncertainty that's provided by COVID, we're confident that we'll continue to see that trend. Certainly, we've recorded a strong result for the September 2020 quarter, and whilst we are seeing some slowdown in respect of trial activity related to COVID, by and large, our customers are committing to clinical trials, and we continue to see an increase in investment in Alzheimer's disease and other areas in which we work. Our cash position, which was already strong, will be significantly enhanced by the $15 million upfront payment that we will receive in the coming weeks, and that will be reflected in our 31 December financial reporting. All of this taken together, we're confident that Cogstate will be able to deliver a profitable 2021 financial year, and that we're well placed to be able to deliver value creation for our shareholders into the future. So with that, I would like to open up for any questions. I understand from the instructions I've been given that people can ask questions, and I've got a number of those here in front of me. So I'm just going to read through those now, if I can just get this to work. So let me just read those. So the first question is, ASI partners with others. How are you different, and how will they support you? So thank you. So certainly ASI is partnering with a number of different organisations in the Alzheimer's disease field. We actually think that that's incredibly important in terms of what we're trying to achieve as they build out that ecosystem. ASI went through quite an intensive exercise before they chose to partner with Cogstate. They shared with us that they reviewed over 160 different cognitive assessments before choosing to partner with Cogstate. The second question I've got here is, do you feel you have built a moat around your business, or do you face current competition? So certainly we do face competition, but what we believe is a really important differentiator between us and others is the extensive scientific evidence that we've built up with over 600 peer-reviewed publications. And the reality is that just takes some time to replicate. The other aspect is for us is the continued focus on innovation to make sure we continue to be at the forefront of cognitive assessment and really the utility of those tools and the usability of those tools. Another question I've got here is, how does a cognition test measure decline without a baseline? Presumably cognition would vary across populations. For example, 2 20-year-olds would have different cognitive markers. So certainly that's true. And so we do two things within Cogstate. The first is that we do compare against age-based normative data. And whilst that any 2 20-year-olds would have different cognitive markers, and that's true, you do see alignment on age-based normative database, provided your database is large enough, and ours is certainly substantial database where Cogstate has undertaken millions of tests over our 20-year history. So we do compare to a normative database, but one of the great advantages of Cogstate is that having taken a first test, what we can then do is measure change, so change in that individual. And there's no doubt that those individual assessments are much more sensitive than comparison to a baseline. So the next question I've got here is, your global development agreement with ASI outside of Japan, will you be getting paid a royalty every time the test is used? If a commercial drug is launched in the US, what are the estimates? How many would that need to be screened to identify? So the simple answer to that question is that yes, Cogstate will receive a royalty. It's a low double-digit royalty on gross revenue from every test that is used worldwide. And as I mentioned earlier, Cogstate will be paid the higher of the minimum royalty or that royalty amount. If a commercial drug is launched in the US, it's hard to estimate, how many tests exactly would be used in terms of measurement of cognition. What I would say is that the target market there is not people necessarily with Alzheimer's disease. It's everybody worried about the prospect of Alzheimer's disease. So, so that's a really large opportunity. That's everyone over the age of, and you can pick your age here, but whether it's 55, 60, 65, 70, whatever it is, it's a large market, and, in an aging population, it's a growing market. The final question I've got here is, did ASI consider just buying Cogstate? And I can't really answer that, but certainly we've been having discussions for some time now in relation to this global license agreement. Certainly Cogstate at the moment, the board of Cogstate sees substantial upside in terms of our valuation, and we'd like to crystallise some of that value before we would contemplate a sale of the business. A couple of quick ones have just come through. Any plan to list on NASDAQ in the US? So no immediate plans to change our listing, but certainly we will consider that in time. And then one final question, then I'll have to jump off because I think I'm already over my time. Can you talk about your partnership with ERT and how that could expand your clinical trials business? The really brief answer that I'll give there is that for the 2019 year, of all the drugs approved by the FDA, 75% of those trials were conducted on the ERT platform. So ERT is a multi-billion-dollar revenue business. They control a large portion of the clinical trials market. We're really pleased with our association with them, and we think they can be a tremendous sales channel for us to improve our penetration into that clinical trials market. With that, I'll leave you for the next presenter. I appreciate your interest in Cogstate, and thank you for your time.